Now we're back in the saddle and on the road with the men who have the staying power on one of cycling.
Well, on the front you can see the Taconi Sport team not being selected for the Tour de France, as he was checking down his little list here to make. Yes, they are. They're in the Tour de France, so who's going to ride for them on this particular day? Let me then just confirm, because they've been shuffling the pack quite a bit, those that have qualified for the Tour de France, in case you wish to know. And the teams are as follows that have qualified for the Tour de France as at the announcement yesterday in Paris. The 16 that qualified through the system I mentioned the other day are as follows: Fassa Bortolo, who are in this race today, Telecom, Rabobank, Rabobank are also right, Telecom are here, Rabobank are here, Mape, they're also here, they qualify, Lotto, they qualify, we've got them here today too as well, Ebenesto.com, they've also qualified for the big tour as well, so we'll see them in action, together with the Cofidis team, that's David Miller's lot, Onse, US Postal, Domo Farm Fritz, Lampre, Kelme, Taconi, CSC Tiscali, Oescatel and Alacio. All that lot, the 16 of them, had pre-qualified through various reasons, being in the top 10, being winners of the World Cup team, being team winners of the Tour de France or the Tour of Italy or the Tour of Spain. That's how they were qualifying. And also the team that won the World Cup last year, so they qualified for certain reasons, and they went down the overall classification on the UCI to get to a point where they had 5 more to pick, and the 5 wildcards were deliberated by the Tour de France, and they had something like about 10 or so teams to fill those final 5 places. So much nail-biting as we now get a slow motion of the riders coming through here. And the final selection of the 5 invited were the Psycho team, which have got Simoni with them, which is not surprising they've been selected because he was winner of the Tour of Italy last year. De Luca, who is one of the real up-and-coming riders, although he had a comeuppance in this race because he crashed a couple of days ago and has now gone back, so he's out of action. And also remember that Simoni has also crashed early on this year, but it looks like his legs are getting better. So Simoni and De Luca, all being well, could be in the Tour de France because the Psycho team have been selected. And also in that team they've got Celestino, who won the Tour of Lombardy, and Comaso, who got a stage victory in the Tour, last year or the year before, when he beat Bunelcroft in the stalling sprint. So they're in the Italian team, are in the race, together with 4 of the French teams. There were 6 French teams biting their nails and 2 didn't get selected, but those 4 that did were Bonjour, Crédit Agricole, La Française des Jeux and AG2R Provence. Well, AG2R with Cosepiu, who's won stage in the Tour de France in the past and worn the yellow jersey, that was no surprise. La Française des Jeux, who really had a fantastic season so far this year. Good to see them in action, particularly feel like Brad McGee, the Australian, will be riding there too. Well, Crédit Agricole, that's Stuart O'Grady's team, taking that green jersey right the way through and then finally losing it on the Champs-Élysées last year. Jens Voigt, also a man who took over the yellow jersey in the Tour de France last year, he's still riding. Bonjour, of course, they've got the French champion riding for them, and always a very spirited team too as well. But those 2 failed at the end were the Jean de la Tour team and the Big Mat Ober, and already there's rumblings going on that both those 2 teams might cancel their sponsorship next year because they didn't get into the Tour de France. Well, let's hope that they find some solution to that problem and not be selected. 20 kilometres to go as our 2 leaders, Pronk and Lozano there. It's Lozano on the front at the moment, Pronk trailing in his wheel past the vineyards in the background, and when they get in they will, I hope, manage to stay away, but somehow I don't think that gap, 20 kilometres, just 1 minute and 28 seconds will be enough for them to survive. But they've really enlivened the proceedings today. That just shows you that people do get out. But as Tony Rominger was saying this morning, that well, he said this is an outdoor event and it's for men. It's an outdoor sport, it's for men. Well, these 2 chaps here have been really riding manfully so far, but it looks like they might find themselves being swallowed up before very long. David Miller is in that main group at the moment, and I understand that he was feeling very good yesterday, very positive, just not very happy with the way in which at the end that breakaway group didn't work sufficiently enough to stay away, and he went back into the pack, took it easy on the climb, and lost to 2 minutes 40 seconds, but he's very happy with his performance so far. His feel is coming on. And by the way, let me now go back to the main pack here. If you've got one of these website devices or computers, sort of one stage removed from a microwave oven as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, this one you actually see things on, you press the right buttons. And you'd like to make a note to get on to David Miller's website. I know many of the riders have websites, but I know that many of the Brits will be interested in what David has to say, because James runs it for him, and Francis, his sister, is also very much involved in keeping things motoring for him on the PR side. That they do have a website, and it's going to be relaunched this coming Friday. So if you get onto the thing now, you'll find it probably a bit out of date, but it's being relaunched this coming Friday, when David's really getting into the swing of things, as we now see the Phonak team starting to get the thing really motoring too. The stripy jerseys, the Aqua and Sapone, are starting to motor likewise. We're going alongside the Rhone. As I said to you, we go on the left-hand side. We went up one side. We're now turning to come back down the other side. There you can see them going down with the river there, the River Rhone, and they're stringing out now, running in towards the finish. But if you want to get onto David's website, you can try it now, but it's going to be updated on this coming Friday, and it's the usual www, World Wide Web, www, and then the dot, and this is all one word, by the way, so are you ready? It's millertime.com. So let's go that again. It's at ITS, MILLARTIME. It's millertime.com. Of course, on Eurosport, we also have Eurosport.com, bringing you up to date on many things, not only cycling, but other sports too as well. But if you're interested in what David Miller has to say, and about every other day or so, his information will be there on the screen for you to read his comments. And one thing I like about David, he's always got something to say, and it's very interesting. And so if you want to get on the old website, say Friday week, it gets updated to hear David's comments as we get closer and closer and closer towards the Tour de France, which this year is starting in Luxembourg. I know many of the people listening in the afternoon are not devoted cycling followers, but they switch on, pick up Eurosport, and stay with us on our coverage. And then sometimes, yeah, we'd like to go and see it. Well, we're actually starting out in Luxembourg this time. Delightful part of the world. And so if you've got any some banking to do, because it's one of those offshore places, nip over there and spend some of your gains upon the bike race and enjoy yourself out there. And yes, I'm sure that a number of people will do that, because if you go to Luxembourg for the start, the first week it works its way back across from Luxembourg towards the channel, and give an opportunity to stay with the race for a bit, and then come home after that first week. So that will be a Luxembourg start for the Tour of France, but the start of the Tour of Holland, sorry, the Tour of Italy will be in Holland this Saturday week tomorrow, May the 11th. Right, now then, rabbiting on here. I haven't given the exact rundown because we start the programme with the position on the general classification, and you can see these little logs whizzing along here. We'll try and pick out, in inverted commas, some of the teams for you who are looking for a stage victory today. And in the sprint, certainly, we've got to see the Tour Sport team that's in the zebra sort of gear, trying to get a stage victory. We'd like to see also the yellow, white and greenish colours of the Phonak team trying to get a good sprint bonus, because there are 10, 6 and 4 seconds bonus at the end of the race today. So they'll also be trying to go and pull back these two riders up in front. But the overall situation then coming into the stage today is that the general classification is headed by Daryl Frijo of the Tour Sport team, and he's ahead of Alexander Moose of the Phonak squad by 11 seconds. So can't really be Moose overtaking him just on the bonuses today in the sprint, so they might sort of ease that one out for tomorrow when we finish up the big climb of the only mountaintop finish we've got in the race this year. So they may keep their powder dry, if you say that on a day like this. And so those two, Moose and Verbrugge, are lying there behind Frigo. Moose 11 seconds back, Rick Verbrugge 13 seconds back for the Lotto team. Eddie Manzoli, also riding for Tour Sport, is in 4th spot, 15 seconds in the rear. The Aqua Sapone rider, Christian Gasparoni, is 5th at 19 seconds. In 6th spot is Zubalidia of the Oescatel team. He's also at 19 seconds back. Cuesta riding for Cofidis, David Miller's team, is lying in 7th spot at 20 seconds. Honchar from the Passo Bertolo team. He's there in 8th spot at 21 seconds. There's as he tapping the side of his nose. If Mr. Honchar can stay with this lot tomorrow on that uphill climb as an ex-world champion time trialist, you might find him, if that 21 seconds still sits there, looking to get the overall victory. Watch this space, or in fact watch Eurosport's programme on Sunday, even better still. In 9th spot then for the Lamprey team is Massimo Codò, and he's 23 seconds back on Dario Frigo. And in 10th spot, bringing up a whole galaxy of Italians, is Andrea Noe from the Mappe team. He's 24 seconds back. But one of the revelations of the race so far is, whoops, steady the bus. Right, around okay. This, by the way, you can see how tricky it was going round. There's why two riders can still stay out while the main pack will slow down even more than they do on a corner like that. So let's give them a bit of a breathing space here, and you'll watch them go around in a minute. Let's hope they stay upright. There's the first one, another one yet to come. So back then in 11th spot, one of the revelations of this race is this Cadel Evans for the Mappe team. He's just 24 seconds down. Useful little climber, so again tomorrow on that mountaintop climb he could well be in there upsetting a few people. Guarini, another good climber riding for the Telecom team, is 13th, unlucky for some, but hey, it's Friday too, isn't it? He's 13th overall. Don't think he'll win the stage today, but he is just 26 seconds back. Guterres Calme 15th, and so on all the way down. Belly back in 23rd. In fact, we've got right the way down to 43rd. We've got 43 riders all within 1 minute of Dario Frigo, the overall leader at the moment. They're certainly accelerating. The gap is coming down to less than half a minute with these two riders who've survived so far, and they've entertained us all the way through, but I think their numbers up. And we're watching here that the Rabobank rider Matej Pronk taking on some liquid substance. Yes, it's when you think a wet day like this, you still need to drink. You don't dehydrate like you do, I think, at the moment. They're probably getting webbed feet. We've had 3 consecutive days when it's been chucking it down, so I think when they take the shoes and socks off tonight, they better inspect their feet and probably think they've got webbed feet or flippers for tomorrow. Let's hope it's not so bad tomorrow and it goes away, because up there on the climb tomorrow it could be rather nasty. If the weather drops cold again, we might find ourselves with some sleet and snow. I hope not, because these riders here were looking for some decent conditions to get ready for the big races yet to come. This great classic race, the Tour of Romandie Stage, back to 1947, and the Italians who are looking so dominant at the moment. They won it last year with Frigo. The year before, Salvadelli got it. So are they going to get it a triple this time round? On the front on this particular stage, we've got a Spanish rider and a Dutchman holding the fort, but not for long. So the overall situation, still Frigo in the lead by 11 seconds from Moose, and Verbrugge in 3rd spot at 13 seconds. Still got a bit of a gap here, and the course running towards the finish, there's nothing enough in the way of climbs to split the field, so it could be down for the sprinters. Lombardi, who's a very useful sprinter, he's lying 45th overall, but he's 1 minute and 19 seconds down, so even if he gets a 10 seconds bonus, it won't make much difference on the general classification at the All. Britain's David Miller's dropped to 64th now. He was up as high as 7th on general classification. He's 2 minutes and 50 seconds down overall. Very pleased with yesterday's ride, very pleased with his time trial, and pleased with the way things are going at the moment. So keep your fingers crossed that David, who's on his way back after glandular fever, which his mother told me is a kissing disease. Good, it's so easy in kissing, but that's why the teenagers get it. I think it's just one of the things that adults can get it as well. So David then on his way back from glandular fever, feeling good, and we'll be rooting for him in the time trial. I'm supposed to be independent, by the way. Commentators aren't supposed to take sides, but when David gets going, then we like to get out there and wave the old Union Jacks. A disappointing race so far for Levi Leipheimer, who's back in 88th spot for the Rabobank team. He's 7 minutes and 36 seconds down. You can see one of his teammates out at the front now. He might do a reasonable ride tomorrow, but the Rabobank team snaffled him up from US Postal, and he's got an opportunity of their support, but he's taking it a bit quiet at the moment to get himself into full swing. Another American that also is still trying to get himself organised and maybe is still waiting for the Tour de France before he can show is Kevin Livingston, who's again been hard, another ex-US Postal rider, and Kevin's back in 112th spot to 14 minutes down. But there are always stories behind this: crashes, sickness, illness, and then once you know that your number's up, then you might as well go and sit back in the bunch and not must have got and wait for the big races yet to come. It's really almost, I keep referring, unfortunately I can't help it, nor can the rest of the journalists, to the Tour de France, and in some respects one could say hell. The whole of the racing season seems to be now revolving round the Tour de France. It is such a great international races, and you can imagine the hand-wringing of the two French teams when they didn't get in. But if you're just going to sponsor a team to get in the Tour de France, and it isn't a strong team, then I can't understand why people worry about not getting in, because if you get in, as we saw with a certain team last year on the French team, who just got kicked to death all the way through the finish, and they were never ever on the telly, and the only interviews they got was finding out why they weren't doing well. So I suppose that while some of the sponsors may say, I want to spend so much money, it's, you know, money doesn't buy you a top racing team, by the way. Same thing with football. How many football teams the owners have just gone out with a checkbook, gone into enormous debt, and recruited lots of star performers, and they haven't gelled as a team. You look where West Bromwich Albion have gone to this year, and you look to see the checkbook, and I think they locked it in the safe. God knows how many years ago. They probably lost the combination to the safe now, but they managed to get themselves up in the Premier Division without going out there and splashing out a lot of money. So all due credit to the manager and the team for getting there. So teamwork is very important. Some teams do have an ambience about them, and particularly the Française des Jeux, a very young team that's gotten the Tour de France this year, and it was almost on a knife edge as to whether they would continue sponsorship. And La Française des Jeux is equivalent of the Camelot in Great Britain. They stay with the sport, and Marc Meadows has been responded by the young riders coming through now, and he's produced a team which has got into the Tour de France, and once again I'm sure will enliven things. So there again, not a big budget team, but a team that has now done sufficiently good enough to get itself selected for the Tour. Well, there's much hand-wringing amongst the French, who've still got, what, 4 or 5 teams in the race, 5 teams against 6 from Italy. But I suppose the French ought to take consolation from the fact that the greatest tennis not match, what's the word? Not Grand Prix, whatever it is. Grand Slam, that's right. Anyway, the greatest, I've now caught our 2 breakaway riders, has got to be Wimbledon. When did you last see a Brit in the final, let alone winning the darn thing? And we don't say, well, we're going to shut it up shop, and we're going to, the sponsors won't turn up and sponsor Wimbledon, and we'll all go away in a dark corner and moan the fact we haven't got any tennis players that can win Wimbledon. But you never know. Henman and Rodesky are still out there having a go. We don't cry. And either in the women's or the doubles say, well, that's it, we're not going to play a game. We're also the world's greatest losers, but there's much anguish in France for 2 teams that haven't got selected. But there is an interesting solution. They're all together now, by the way. Can I grab it for a minute? Right, then we get on the race. Phil Liggett and myself were discussing it, and in fact he went into print on the Cycle Sports, and I was talking yesterday to Danny Nellison, our Dutch commentator. Why don't the Tour de France have 8-man teams, not 9-man teams? Because if you, at the moment, there are 21 teams of 9 men, that's 189 riders. If you went down to 8 men, not 9, then you could have 2 extra teams. In other words, you could have 23 teams, and 23 by 8 is 184 against 189 riders this year. So in fact, you could include 2 more teams by cutting it down to 8 men. There's only 8 men in this race this time, so why not for the Tour de France? So they're thundering in toward the finish now, and they're starting with 8-man teams here, and we've lost 1 or 2 with the crashes and sicknesses. Gerhard Steiner, who haven't qualified the Tour de France this year, they say it's a long-term process. They want to be in there probably next year or the year afterwards. They've now down to only, 3 men left in the team, by the way. Roskis is their main sprinter, so perhaps he might be slipping the net as we now got 9 kilometres to go. So many other riders have had problems. There's been crashes. If you look at what's left, just imagine the riders that are in these conditions then, because Hardeker of the Gerhard Steiner team, Hardeker was involved in a crash when one of the riders hit a car, and then he tried to get out of the way of the rider that fell and went straight into the motorbike and smashed himself in that one, so he was out of the race. Another rider who'd been in trouble too was Morini. He had crashed in training, and he was trying to ride in this race, and with the wet conditions and so on, he was in so much pain. He's got some nerve problems in his spine. He was crying in pain, so he climbed off and stopped. The rider number 146, Parazin, we don't know why he retired, but he's knocked it on the head. And also Bo Larsen, who was struggling from day one, the Danish rider, he's finished. They're down to 3 riders. So it's fair thought for the survivors of the race so far, and those that have been brought down in the crashes or not being feeling very well, and to the Garastana team under the managership of Rolf Goltz, who, those of you who followed the Tour of Ireland, the old Nissan Classic, remember that Rolf ran out victor in that many years ago, and he's worked with us on Eurosport from time to time. Well, he's having trouble now with his team thinned down to only 3 men. They didn't qualify for the Tour de France, and I think that despite all the agony of the French through not having De La Tour and the other team from France, Big Mat Aubé, not there on the lineup for the Grand Boucle. If I was Mr. Team Coast, I would also be spitting nails. In fact, he's saying that the manager, the owner of the Team Coast, the Coast being the group of clothing shops, that he's going to look for a co-sponsor next year. He spent a lot of money. By the way, they're the 10th team, and here we got Alex Zuller riding in this race. We saw him get that cracking second place yesterday in the yellow jersey. They are 10th on the UCI classification at the moment, 10th, and they haven't been selected for the Tour de France. And great disappointment, I think, because they've got riders like Zuller, who's been up there on the podium in the Tour de France, but Escartin likewise, and Casero, who won the Tour of Spain last year. So they've got some real classy riders in there. They're lying 10th overall at the moment. They've had 9 victories, the Coast team, so far this season, way more than many other teams that have actually had victories, and they didn't qualify either. The Aqua Sapona team, Cipollini's team, they didn't qualify, or at least they didn't get selected, although they've had 9 victories and they're lying 11th on the UCI classification. Now that's a lot to do with Cipollini, who had the team built completely round about him. And when you see him start to sprint down here, Lombardi's lead-out man already got a stage victory in the Tour of Romandie, and I think one of them's just taken his shirt off now, or is that one of the Passo Bertolo team? I'm not quite sure. But anyway, that team didn't get selected because they fear that if Cipollini rides the Tour de France, in fact, one of the on the front, see the zebra shorts now, or semi-longs, that's the Cipollini's team. The fact that he wouldn't go past the Pyrenees, he'd only ride down there. Well, damn it, the Pyrenees is 11 days into race. We could have had Cipollini for 11 days, entertaining, winning stages, great character, and sport needs characters. And then when he got the Pyrenees, if he lasted a couple of days or climbed on and went home, so what the hell? Because we're going to see many people on the rostrum at the end of the Tour de France who are mountain climbers, and you see sweet Fanny Adams of them all the way through until we get to only Pennines. And then for 11 days we don't see the mountain goats. They spend 2 days in the mountains, and then they go out the other side, spend 1 day sort of going along with the rest, then up they come again up the Alps, and off they go and take all the garlands. No, I'm exaggerating, but the Tour is more often built by a good all-rounder, a man that can climb and time trial, but the sprinters take a real kicking in the mountains, and people like Zabel and O'Grady, they soldier on right the way to the end, and good luck to them. And Cipollini, unfortunately, in the Tour of Italy, fortunately the Tour of Italy goes to the end, but the Tour de France has a reputation for climbing off. And I think he's won something like about 10 or 11 stages in the Tour. In fact, 12 I think it is now. He's had a cracking start this season, winning Milan-San Remo and Ghent-Wevelgem, but he said a few sort of out-of-court things about riding the Paris-Nice as well, sorry, the Paris-Roubaix. And I think that the Society Tour de France felt that Mr. Cipollini was persona non grata. Is that Italian or Latin? Anyway, persona non grata, Mr. Cipollini, his team Aqua and Sapona hasn't been selected. But, says he, going back to his favourite hobby horse, what if there are 8 riders per team rather than 9? They could put 2 more teams in. And in fact, if they went on and went a shade further, and put 3 extra teams in, they'd have 192 riders against the 189 which will start this year. So you're only going to have an extra 3 riders by going to 3 extra teams, and you could fit in the oddballs like Cipollini's team. That's just a little thought, by the way, but of course there again, it isn't just the teams. You've got the vehicles, you've got the assistance of the race, you've got nearly as many people travel with the race, so you've got hotel accommodation problems, you've got traffic jams on the road, extra vehicles and so on, adds to the whole problem. But it is worth a thought. I know Sean Kelly said to me, no, I don't want 8-man teams, it is not good for the sport, but it's worth looking at. Well, we're getting in now to finish. It's undoubtedly going to be down to a sprint finish. Those who have been with us on Eurosport throughout this whole day of the Tour of Romandie, thanks for your company so far. And we've had a couple of breakaway riders who've just joined us that did nip off down the road, and at one time at halfway through the race they got a 5-minute lead, whittled down all the way under the pressure of this chase group, and now they're back in the main pack as we head into what could well be a sprint finish at the stage today, into what is supposed to be the most sunniest part of Switzerland, a place called Sierra. You can find on your maps. It's alongside the River Rhone. It's wedged between the Bern Alpen, the Bern Mountains, and the Wallisee Alpen, so it's right between there, right up the valley, and we're running in then to the finish today, which will be undoubtedly the way things are going, unless somebody all falls off and brings half the field down. It's going to be a bunch sprint finish. This is the dangerous bit. Now, what we can see of the riders on the front here, those stripy shorts are the riders from Tacconi Sport, so from the Acqua Saponi, and that's the lots with one of the best sprinters in the race at the moment, Lombardi. They've also got Dergenac of Slovenia, who's quite a useful lead-out man, riding for Acqua Saponi, and Trenti, Guido Trenti, who with a name like that you'd think he's Italian, but he comes from the USA. He rode for many years, Guido Trenti. He must be one of the oldest riders in the race, riding the American circuit. He's been picked up now by Acqua Saponi, another useful sprinter, and will be setting himself up as a lead-out man then for Lombardi. The Team Coast team, you see a yellow jersey or yellow racing cape prizing its way through towards the front, towards the end. Watch out then for Fabrizio Guidi, who's also a very quick finisher indeed when it comes to a sprint. Spent some time riding with the Mercury team and getting successes there too as well. Might be led out by Frank Hoyt from Denmark, another big hitter, could be doing some work on the front to keep his man out of trouble. And for the Psycho team, it depends if Mr. Comiso has decided to play today, or whether he's sulking at the back. He's an amazing character. Some days he's good, some days he's bad, and a bit like the curate's egg, batting in parts. And whoops, the bus. Steady up, lads! Gosh. Okay, Grandma, you can take your hands off your eyes now. Nearly went straight through the fountain in the middle and out the other side. Yes, so back to sprinters. Comiso for Psycho will be one other rider to watch out for in the mad gallop at the end of it all. And but for my money, Mr. Lombardi has got to be the one to watch out for. Yeah, the other sprinter, by the way, Guterres for the Kelme team and Manzoloni for Tacconi. If we go through the first, second and third, when we had that stage finish at Malle Beviard, Lombardi won that one. Guterres for Kelme was second, Manzoloni for Tacconi Sport third, Caminhas for Land of Great Credit was fourth, and the group for Rabobank was back in fifth spot. So there wasn't quite as many of what I call the all singing and dancing sprinters stuck in that little lot at the time. So here is the work being put in by the man I mentioned to you, the Slovenian rider Dergenac, number 133. He's ploughing away on the front, and it looks like they split off the front now. It is splitting. Nice little noise in the background. What else did you get for Christmas? So the job then of Dergenac, 133 on his back, 136 if you can spot the numbers by the way, that's Lombardi, and 137 is Trenti, and it has started to split at the front. The pressure of the lead-out men, they've got to keep this going then. You do take your life into your hands here under these conditions, and it takes a certain sort of well, stupidity, I suppose you might say, to ride at these sort of speed. They're travelling on at the moment around about 30-35 miles an hour. They get up to 40 miles an hour when they really start to sprint, and you're doing this thing on those very thin tyres. They're blown up very hard indeed. Knowing something went right the way to the finish, they will have perhaps get a little bit of air out to get a bit of grip, but if you just crank the old bike a bit too far, or you manage to touch the brakes, then whoosh, down you go. So you've got to have a lot of courage here. And our little group we've got on the front here, you can see them blurred down at the moment, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 10 or 12 riders, slightly at the front, and still again the stripe, the zebra's in full flight at the moment. Well, there they go. Zebra, a horse with pyjamas, and it looks like a zebra might get another victory, but he's way down on the general classification over a minute down is Lombardi, so even with the bonus he won't make much change. And on the general classification, 10, 6 and 4 there, but Moose and Verbrugge and Frigo I think will all keep out of trouble here, leaving it to the sprinters. On the left-hand side, looks like Hunter's having a go now. 2-4, the Mapei team on the left-hand side. Hunter tries to come through, taking advantage. And for Gerolsteiner, they're starting to go for the sprint too as well. But I'm not sure, is it Toshnik trying for that one? But he's still out there at the moment as Lombardi hits the front. Lombardi with Hunter behind him. Lombardi goes for this one. Hunter behind him in third spot. I think that was Lombardi. Hunter back in third. And one of the Gerolsteiner riders, it could have been Toshnik. I'll have to wait and see. No, Ruskies, my mistake. Ruskies there, and it was. Ruskies there into second spot. Hunter there, so I would rate that as Lombardi, Ruskis and Hunter. Poof. Well, Ruskis this morning got a very hangdog expression about his face, and so the team were down to 3 men, and Gerolsteiner not too happy about the situation. So Ralph Gols will at least be saying, well, we did the best we could, and looks like a second spot. I'll wait for confirmation of that one. Hunter coming up on the far side, the South African, not again, I think, enjoying the weather, but he has lived and raced a lot in Italy, and so he's well aware of the problems that we got. So there it is, the sunny city of Sierra, with the riders now coasting in, and there we go, there it is. Sit. Yep. Yeah, so certainly we've got the top 3, and the Groot it was in 4th spot off, they say, as they call it, the podium, 1st, 2nd and 3rd. So Lombardi then just ahead of Ruskis, ahead with Hunter, and back into 4th spot Bram de Groot for Rabobank. Well, that's the sort of man that Cipollini recruited, and he recruited him, by the way, for the Telecom team, because Lombardi used to be the lead-out man for the Telecom team for Zabel. He's gone across now to ride with Cipollini, and there's your rundown on the sprinters that survived that splashy run in toward the finish. A nice mixed bag of nations, and Moose down there in 15th spot, coming in with the rest of the contenders for the overall crown. Frigo back there in 10th. You see, likewise again, the sensible thing to do is to stay near the front, otherwise you will get, there's a little bit of gap there, you see, because Frigo just ahead of Moose, he's prized 5 seconds off, so good riding by Frigo to come in that little group of 11 men. He just hooked himself into there, and he snaffled back another 5 seconds on Moose, who was lying second to him on the classification this morning, 11 seconds down as at this morning. So he just picked up another useful 5 seconds. So Frigo, by staying with that group that were going for the victories, has now got himself 16 seconds ahead of Alexander Moose. There it is on your screen, the photo finish system. As I said yesterday, they do have a little counter on the front wheel, and it picks them as they go across the line. That confirms then Moose is back now in second spot by a few more 5 seconds, 16 seconds back. Verbrugge also losing a few. So that's the situation then, with the win going today to Lombardi, and still in the leader's jersey, Dario Frigo.